President Trump is now ordering a review of the Smithsonian museums, accusing the institutions of focusing too much on, quote, how bad slavery was. He made that comment in a social media post yesterday. The president says he will subject the museums to the exact same process his administration has conducted at universities, which have faced federal funding cuts over DEI and anti-Semitism concerns. Trump's comments come 1 week after his administration told the museums they would be required to adjust any content the White House finds problematic.
All right, folks, so not only is Donald Trump asserting inappropriate authoritarian executive control over an increasing number of aspects of our lives, but in particular, his war on woke, his war on DEI is such that he is now bitching at the Smithsonian Museum, and frankly any museum, for talking about how bad slavery was. What a hill to proverbially die on. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, when your anti-woke, anti-DEI posture gets you to a place where you are triggered at the notion of an American museum condemning slavery and exploring how bad slavery was, you've missed the plot and you've officially become a loser. And unfortunately, our president is a loser. So this is what he says on Truth Social. He says the museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke. The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discusses how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. We're not going to allow this to happen, and I have instructed my attorneys to go through the museums and start the exact same process that's been done with colleges and universities, where tremendous progress has been made. This country cannot be woke because woke is broke. We have the hottest country in the world, and we want people to talk about it, including our museum. So slavery, recognizing that slavery is bad, is woke. And Trump's war on woke compels him to oppose any sort of emphasis on the fact that slavery was bad. It's pretty shocking. I want to play you a couple of clips from two CNN hosts addressing this. And then we're going to look into the social media response to this insane notion from Donald Trump.
But the museum, if you actually go to it, rather than just talk about it and see it on paper from a Truth Social post, it doesn't only focus on suffering. It is about resilience and achievement and celebration. Umbrella, history. Take this sports exhibition that highlights the achievements of greats like Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown, Olympic uniforms from Gabby Douglas and Carl Lewis, or Double Victory, honoring African Americans who served in the United States military, Tuskegee Airmen, to Purple Hearts, and more. There's Musical Crossroads, celebrating Black influence in everything from jazz, an American-made form of music, all the way through hip-hop. And yes, it includes Louis Armstrong's trumpet. How about Spirit in the Dark, which looks at how religion is essential to the story of Black America? Well, if that's woke, then maybe woke just means telling the whole story. Because every exhibition that I just mentioned showcases exactly what Trump says that he wants. Success, brightness, a look toward the future. And Trump, well, he should know that, because the museum is one he visited in 2017 during his first term.
This museum is a beautiful tribute to so many American heroes. It's amazing to see. We did a pretty comprehensive tour, but not comprehensive enough. So, Lonnie, I'll be back. I told you that. Because I could stay here for a lot longer, believe me. It's really incredible. This tour was a meaningful reminder of why we have to fight bigotry, intolerance, and hatred in all of its very ugly forms.
Did you hear that? The museum is a meaningful reminder to fight bigotry, intolerance, and hatred in all of its very ugly forms. I couldn't have said it better myself, Mr. President. This post feels like he's driving around looking for a problem with no particular place to go. Kind of like he was in Chuck Berry's red Cadillac, which, by the way, is also on display there.
So yeah, that was brilliant that Laura used Trump's own words against him. Of course, again, MAGA doesn't give a shit because they don't care about being internally consistent at all. And Trump can say something on Monday, totally contradict himself on Tuesday, and they not only don't care about the contradiction, they often celebrate it because consistency is for libcucktards, okay? And actually what's really cool is being able to say and do whatever the hell you want and owning the libs when they get upset because you're unprincipled and hypocritical. Right. But again, this is a really compelling case that she made that the Smithsonian actually does celebrate American achievement, American success, and not just America's failures, both technological and moral, but also its triumphs. Here's CNN host Abby Phillip also addressing the scandal by Trump.
But on this topic, it's important to say objectively, slavery was indeed bad. It was evil, the nation's original sin. And it is impossible to understand the true history of this country without fully grappling with slavery's impact. Simply because of their birthplace and the color of their skin, the bodies and spirits of Black men, women, and children were exploited for profit and power. They were forced onto ships, bound by shackles and collars that ripped off their skin. One older man described it as iron entering our souls. Some chose to jump into the waters infested with sharks rather than feel that iron. Now, once they arrived on this very soil, they were forced to work by way of the whip, despite being starved, sleep-deprived, threatened, tortured, physically and psychologically. They were auctioned off, humiliated, fearful, and separated from their families and their children. Black women and girls were raped and sexually assaulted. Many were brutally murdered and mutilated. Now, this endured for decades, centuries. And even in the places where slavery was not legal, institutions from our banks to universities were built on enslaved labor in both the North and in the South. And for many of the white Americans who did not personally own slaves, they benefited from a caste system that concentrated wealth and political power in their hands. So, when we acknowledge the existence of Black people who operated George Washington's Mount Vernon or the Black hands that built the White House, we are acknowledging the existence, the perseverance, and the contributions of the souls that white supremacy sought to erase. Those people built families, they developed a culture, they were the keepers of the faith, cultivators of community. And they are the ones who deserve credit for forcing America to rid itself of the stain of slavery. Now, all of this information, these stories are from the Smithsonian's African American History Museum. And I share this not as a lecture for you, but as a lesson. America, the superpower, is largely possible only because of the superpowers of people who went lifetimes without the same rights of generations who were boosted from their backs. True history should include everything. Yes, the evils and the horrors too. And museums are supposed to be places that protect those stories, the images, the lessons, the very things that inform so much of our current state of our republic, from racism to poverty. No matter how painful, or in the president's words, how horrible the lesson. Now, just listen to one formerly enslaved man describe what slavery is like in his own words.
You know what I'd rather do? If I thought that I'd ever be a slave again, I'd take a gun and just end it all right away. Because you're nothing but a dog. You're not a thing but a dog.
Yeah, that was a really powerful segment by Abby Phillips. And again, what's interesting about this is Trump, years ago, refused to die on this particular hill. Donald Trump in his first term, as terrible as he was, had enough sense to not complain about people pointing out, historians and museums pointing out in particular, how bad slavery was and being willing to go into vivid detail to make the historically accurate and emotionally powerful point. This version of Trump is much more unhinged and either because of his own personal flaws, foibles, prejudices, or because of the prejudices and foibles of much of his movement, he has now decided to say, well, listen, museums talking about, slavery is bad. That requires a government crackdown. It's insane. And an indictment of not only Trump's character, but how far he's fallen even relative to where he was in Trump term 1, which was atrocious already. Let's take a look just real quick about the social media response. Scott Jennings, oh Jesus, CNN's smuggest MAGA goon. It's true that slavery is one of the darkest chapters in American history, but it's also true that a lot of brave Americans, fought a war to end it. The question Donald Trump is asking is, are we going to define our country as based on our worst moment or our best? No, you fucking moron. Like, a museum should talk about the worst and the best. I thought museums were about the truth. I thought the truth doesn't. Facts don't care about your feelings. America is a hodgepodge of great moments and terrible moments. Scott Jennings, in a weird way, it's almost like a perverse image of woke. Scott Jennings, or at least the caricature that Republicans envision of woke, this is almost like its own twisted funhouse mirror image, right? Which is that, okay, so you actually don't want to tell the truth. You just want to tell a particular narrative that makes you feel better. Yeah, just terrible attempt at sanitation by Scott Jennings. Friend of the show, Brian Tyler Cohen, points out, yes, slavery was bad. Abby Phillip, of course, whom we just saw a clip of, Harry Sisson, slavery was bad. Apparently the statement now triggers Donald Trump and his fans. Joe Walsh, former far-right Republican congressman, repeatedly posts slavery is bad. Open mic, if you voted for Trump, did you really vote for him to spend time changing the museum exhibits at the Smithsonian about slavery? Gavin Newsom says Trump's GOP has already called slavery, quote, a workforce development program. Now he's trying to erase slavery from U.S. history. Charlie Kirk, culture matters, history matters, museums matter. There's a reason immigrants don't assimilate and why young kids hate their country. They're taught to disrespect this country. Americans have so much to be proud of. This is the greatest republic on the planet, the Smithsonian. The National Museum of our capital city should reflect our national greatness. So again, it's not about telling the truth. And listen, I would totally agree that if all the museum did was talk about America's moral failures and slavery, that also would be wrong because that wouldn't be the full truth. But any attempt to mitigate or eliminate the exposure of slavery from a historical context in order to make you feel better about your country is absurd. It's dishonest. It's pathetic. It's the ultimate bullshit snowflake behavior. And this is what Donald Trump is focused on. It's pretty pathetic. And again, I will tell you, reporters out there who are interviewing Republican lawmakers, which of course they're probably going to be trying to avoid the press as much as possible, they should be asked this fucking question. Any microphone that's in the face of a Republican lawmaker, the first question, well, there are two questions. Number one, why will you call on Donald Trump to release the Epstein files? And number two, in light of this recent scandal, do you condemn Trump's, complaints about teaching slavery and history? Do you condemn that? Do you condemn Trump's attempts to whitewash U.S. history such that we either mitigate or eliminate the teaching of slavery? Republican lawmakers should be asked about that, but I'm worried that they won't be. And they'll once again be graded on a curve and not be forced to answer for the terrible words of their cult leader, the way that Democrats absolutely would if the shoe was on the other foot. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.